Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've compiled what I hope is a great list video thanks to an adapted comment from one of our viewers. Thank you again for the suggestion. We're going to call today's list 10 comics that made me a fan of the characters. As that would suggest, these are all comic book collections that turned me around or really invigorated my love for each of these respective characters or in some cases teams. I'm really eager to talk about this today. I thought it was such a wonderful prompt, so again, kudos to the viewer that suggested it. And just one final note before we start the list, I just wanted to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, perhaps some of the books on this very video, I always encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link to it in the video's description, and if you see anything on that site you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to continue to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. Kicking off our list today in no particular order, we're going to be talking about Captain America by Ed Brubaker. To do that, I have here the Captain America by Ed Brubaker Omnibus Volume 1. Now, this is the first volume in a total of a 5-volume set of omnibuses collecting his entire run on Captain America. And while this is just an unbelievably terrific run, this volume in particular is what made me a Captain America fan. Growing up, I was always aware of Captain America simply because he's been my dad's favorite comic book character as far back as I can remember. So I've always enjoyed him to that end, but I really didn't have other touchstones for this character much beyond that. You know, fast forward to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and we got the Captain America film franchise, and I really enjoyed his incarnation there. A little bit before then, or maybe perhaps around that time, I started to get into comic books myself, and it wasn't before too long that I found my way to Captain America by Ed Brubaker. Of course, the first time I was making my way through this run, I did have a sequence of paperbacks. I'm thankful to say I have upgraded to Omnibus since then, but it is this comic or this run that really turned me around and made me so deeply invested in this character. Since then, I've gone on to read and review several runs on Captain America, but this is the run that really turned it around for me. I've known Brubaker as primarily kind of a crime thriller sort of comic writer, and I think that he incorporates elements of that in this run on Captain America. We also have the kind of international espionage, geopolitics, like angles also kind of on full display here, and I think that those subgenres just fit so well with Captain America. In many ways, this doesn't even feel like a superhero book, and that's to this book's credit. You feel like you're reading a taut thriller, and I just really loved it. The fact that we start with the Winter Soldier story arc as well, I was just absolutely hooked from moment one. A truly moralistic hero who's never afraid to go to whatever reaches he needs to fight for right. Absolutely love Captain America, in no small part due to the incredible run here by Brubaker. Next on this list, we're going to go ahead and jump to the DC Comics side of the fence. This is Green Lantern by Geoff Johns, and this is the Omnibus Volume 1 of a total 3-volume omnibus set, not including event omnibuses like Blackest Night or Brightest Day, but this run really turned me around on the character of Green Lantern. I always thought his power set was really cool. I like that he was part of this interstellar peacekeeping force, and just kind of the imagery or just the costume design, everything about Green Lantern growing up, I always thought was pretty fascinating and cool. You know, I enjoyed the kind of Bruce Timm era Justice League cartoon where we had Jon Stewart's Green Lantern in the primary role, some of the other DC animated films, and just in pop culture in general. But I was never really a fan of the comics. I had a hard time breaking in. I first started reading his Silver Age stuff, and I did like that. I actually think it's one of the better Silver Age titles, but I still was not gripped on him as a solid character for my reading preferences personally. Well, that all changed when I started reading this incredible run by Johns. Again, another case where when I went through the first time, I was reading it in smaller paperbacks or standard size hardcover collections. It's so great to live in this age of omnibus now where I was able to save up and get these volumes upgraded. But it really all starts here for me. It starts the run with Green Lantern Rebirth, which basically brings Hal Jordan back into the fold as a Green Lantern within the DC universe. And after that, it really is a great spot for new or returning Green Lantern fans to jump right aboard. I think why I love this run so much is Johns really adds so much to the mythos of the Green Lantern Corps, and the subsequent other cores within the emotional light spectrum. This has a just far-reaching, epically scoped kind of sequence of story arcs in it, and I was just amazed. Like a lot of other John's work, he has a lot of intensely character-driven storylines that are also just weaved into just these blockbuster, action-packed stories or sequences or issues or what have you. I really loved everything that this brought to the table, and I still think very fondly about this run, probably one of my all-time favorite comic book runs, easily. Next on this list is Moon Knight, and to showcase Moon Knight, we're going to talk about the collection that really made me more of a fan of this character, and of course that is the run here by Jed MacKay. I know he's gone on to do sequel series on Moon Knight that, fingers crossed, I'm hoping we get more omnibuses from him in the world of Moon Knight, but this omnibus really took my breath away. Admittedly, I have dabbled in the world of Moon Knight, I've read some of his earliest stuff, I really enjoyed the run by Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood as well, but this is the run that really hooked me. It captivated me in ways that I didn't expect, and it really made me just endeared to this character in a new way. I always thought Moon Knight looked cool, he seemed edgy and different, and how he navigated his personalities I always thought was fascinating. Moon Knight is also a character that for whatever reason has drawn in some of the best artistic talent in the industry in my mind, or some of them, and I've always just been more curious about this character. But every so often I've had a hard time engaging or really committing to some of his runs. I think the only other entry I could have put in this list for Moon Knight might have been the Jeff Lemire run. I really did love that as well. But this run here by Jed MacKay just blew it out of the water. I was so hooked on this book, I could not put this omnibus down. It is very character driven, but it also is extremely accessible. It doesn't really get too mystical or confusing. I mean, they do have a lot of really exceptional plot lines, but Moon Knight feels more grounded, at least for him, and I liked that. MacKay has also populated this run with a lot of interesting supporting characters, some of which he created for this run, and some he drew in from other parts of the Marvel Universe, like West Coast Avengers, in the case of Tigra, for example. But yeah, really a fascinating run here. I really loved it. I had so much fun reading and reviewing it, and it absolutely made me a fan of this character in kind of a profound new way. I give the credit here to Jed MacKay, again with a bit of an honorable mention to Jeff Lemire. I also think that that was a fantastic run for Marvel's one and only Moon Knight. Next on this list is maybe an interesting choice. This is Mr. Miracle by Tom King and Mitch Gerads from DC Comics. Now, this is a book I only recently made my way through within the last couple months, courtesy of Jake from The Brave and the Boys. Thank you again for sending over this standard hardcover. I've always been curious about this run. I had heard really good things about it, that it was self-contained and just kind of a marvel. I am a fan of Tom King's writing, and so I knew that this was on my list eventually. But after reading it, I was really taken aback by how grounded this work is. On one level, it is just this interstellar sci-fi, just epic, but for most of it, it really is this kind of slice of life drama where we have kind of nuanced looks at things like marriage and early parenthood and relationships and different seasons in life and even some kind of bigger existential questions, and it's all wrapped up in this fantastic maxi series. Of course, I'm aware of Mr. Miracle's history with Jack Kirby and just kind of throughout the DC universe here with the Fourth World and some of those characters. I had been kind of passingly aware of him. I thought the costume was really cool, but I wasn't really grounded with this character. I hadn't had an opportunity to read a ton of his solo stuff, or even when he's been included with a lot of teams, but after reading this, I just find him so fascinating. From his origins and the kind of horrible deal that was made where he was raised by Darkseid, to his kind of tenure as a hero and escapeologist after that. Just really a fascinating character. But through this lens here by Tom King and Mitch Gerads, I just found something so much more. I found a character that is so unbelievably human. In spite of his kind of larger-than-life trappings and things around him in his mythos, we just have an intensely grounded character. And I really had no problem at all engaging with the central characters within this work. And it's just really a profound piece of fiction, especially especially within this medium. In many ways, it feels more like an independent comic than a just kind of standard big two sort of work, and I think that's absolutely to the credit of this creative team. And that's not to be disparaging about the big two. I love the big two, but I rarely see these kinds of really deep, intensive character studies done in Marvel and DC, so when they do come along, I am often stricken, as I was here. Okay, and this is maybe playing with the prompt a little bit, as this is a team book, but a run or collected edition that really turned me around on a character, or in this case group of characters, is absolutely X Factor by Peter David. To showcase that run, I'm actually going to be talking about his first time on X Factor, which is during this 90s run here, collected in the X Factor Omnibus Volume 1 from Peter David. Now, this book really turned me around not only on this team, but really the broader idea of larger X offshoot mutant teams and kind of 90s comics as a whole, if I can be honest with you. Admittedly, before I really dove into this run, I had kind of preconceived notions about a lot of mainstream 90s comic runs, and it wasn't overly flattering. I don't know if it's most of the art styles I encountered during the 90s or some of the big kind of over-the-top action stuff, but for whatever reason, I disconnected a lot with 90s comics, and I kind of tuned many of them out. I kind of just bypassed a lot of it until I came to this run. I absolutely love the way David playfully played with this eclectic group of mutant characters. There's a lot of humor and levity, but it's also balanced with a lot of grounded character-driven drama and some cases tragedy. There is of course some 90s action, but the art is also really dialed in a pretty beautiful way. I loved the art throughout this whole collection. But this really made me a fan of the mutant character Havoc and Polaris and characters like Strong Guy, who I had never encountered before reading this. The rest of the team is of course great as well. Quicksilver and the Multiple Man Madrox, also really, really good names here. The team is obviously larger than that, but these couple characters, like, I absolutely got so into them throughout this run, and I've really enjoyed all of their subsequent appearances in comics after this, but it's all due to this run here on X Factor. Of course, Peter David would come back to do more X Factor during the 2000s House of M era. This is the X Factor's Investigations era. That's also been really fun. I've been making my way through that as well. This book was also on my mind recently, simply because we unfortunately lost Peter David recently, so I've been trying to just go back to some of Peter David's works, and I definitely highly recommend this. This is a 90s comics gem for me, and it's something that absolutely made me fall in love with a lot of these characters. Okay, I couldn't do a list video like this without talking about my favorite comic book character, and that of course is Matt Murdock's Daredevil. And to do that, I'm going to be talking about the comic run that absolutely made me a rabid fan of our favorite horned hero, and that is the run here by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev. We also have some art here from David Mack that is absolutely exquisite as well. So this omnibus is the first volume of a 2-volume omnibus set that completes the entirety of this run, although I do highly recommend the subsequent follow-up run by Ed Brubaker. Really good stuff there as well. I had already become a kind of passing fan of Daredevil. I grew up, enjoying that Ben Affleck movie even, and some of his other earlier comic book appearances. I know I read stuff like some of the Silver Age stuff, Daredevil Yellow, but I really got into Daredevil when I started reading from the Kevin Smith era Daredevil, which I really enjoyed, some of the other David Mack stuff in Daredevil, but once we hit this run here by Brian Michael Bendis, that's when my fandom went into overdrive, and ultimately this is the run I credit with making me just an absolute fan of this character. It was the way Bendis approached Daredevil from just kind of a street level crime perspective. There's a lot of crime fiction tropes throughout this run that's just done in such a fresh way. Like, I feel like the fact that he's a vigilante is almost incidental, but it just works so well in context of Daredevil. The art by the incredible, not only David Mack, but Alex Maleev throughout a lot of this run, it just has this grit to it that absolutely fits the tone of the work in general. Yes, he does some great things with the central character and supporting cast, but it's really this immersive tone and kind of just the storytelling mechanics that really get me. It's a taut thriller as well, and whenever I go into this world, it just feels so living, breathing, authentic. The dialogue is so sharp and top-notch. It is my favorite Bendis work in the Marvel Universe. Probably this and Ultimate Spider-Man, actually, to be fair. I'd probably give those top billing. But I'm a huge Bendis fan, and this is really what what sold me on not only Daredevil, but really Bendis as a whole. I love this run, and to this day, I cite it as probably my favorite superhero comic run of all time. If not my absolute favorite, it's certainly my favorite Daredevil run. Absolutely love Daredevil by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev. Next up today, we're back in the world of DC Comics, talking about one of my personal favorites. You guessed it, it's Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. To showcase this, I of course have this robust deluxe edition from DC Comics. This was written by Tom King with art from Bilquis, and it is an absolute triumph. Supergirl, like I've said with some of the other characters on this list so far, was a character I've always been passingly aware of. I've never disliked this character, but I never really had a run or comics that really endeared me to her either. I always viewed her as kind of Superman's cousin, and I know in her own right she's a great heroine and all of that, but I just really never engaged with her. I would like when she show up in crossover books. Certainly what happened with Crisis on Infinite Earths I thought was really meaningful, but I never really engaged with this character. Well, in comes this work by Tom King, and I was absolutely taken aback. I absolutely reevaluated this character down to the core. Now, this graphic novel can be read as a standalone experience. I'm not even sure if it's considered canon or in mainline DC continuity, as with a lot of Tom King's work, and I just don't even know that it matters. This is a coming-of-age, interstellar epic, and the art from Bilquis is just absolutely transcendent. It has this dreamy quality, the colors pop from every single panel, and I was just taken away. It's such an immersive work, and it is really just beautiful to behold. Tom King's work has, in my mind, never been more lyrical or just beautiful. I really enjoyed it. It is kind of a buddy drama series about a young woman or young girl who's unfortunately lost her father recently, who's on a quest for vengeance. She pairs up with an unlikely Supergirl who's at her own kind of crossroads, trying to figure out what she stands for or what she does next, and the two of them just span the stars trying to find the man who killed this young woman's father. Along the way, we just get to see not only the heart of their relationship, but just really how they grow up together in interesting ways. The action is wonderful, but it's more than that. I just can't even describe it in such a short period of time, but to say I became a Supergirl fan after reading this is an absolute understatement. I loved this work, and it really made me fall in love with this character. Next on this list today of comics that made me a fan of the characters is another team book. This is Secret Six by Gail Simone, and this is Omnibus Volume 1. And admittedly, I probably could have thrown the Infinite Crisis Omnibus in this list as well in exchange for this, but I'm going with Secret Six, as they both reprint the same Villains United miniseries. And that miniseries, of course, debuts this eclectic and kind of rogue team of villains known as the Secret Six. What made this run, though, so spectacular to me is how it just drew me into this just absolutely volatile cast of characters. I was passingly aware of a couple of them, like Deadshot and Bane, who would eventually come to join their roster, and I was aware of Catman as sort of a punchline Batman joke, but I had never really read him in comic books before, and a lot of these other characters were just completely new to me. I think I was aware of a Ragdoll at one point as well, but anyway, this run not only introduced me to a ton of these different characters, but it really made me enjoy them in new ways. I wouldn't go so far as to say it humanized each of these characters. I am walking away still feeling like some of them are just kind of inhumane, borderline monstrous, but there is a nobility in some, and I think that was something that surprised me. More than that, though, this run really was just engaging and fun. There's a kind of humor and charisma to this run that's really hard to do justice describing. This run also kind of helped make me a fan of Gail Simone. I'd read some of her Batgirl run as well, which I enjoyed, but I'm still newer to Simone, and this run really just made me want to be on the lookout for more of her writing. It's really fun here. A lot of fantastic artists across this run as well, but it really is just this kind of chaotic team dynamic that not only sold me on the group of characters as the Secret Six, but a lot of the individuals as well. Throughout this run, you get a lot of good interplay between all of the members, and a lot of spotlight kind of showcasing on individual members throughout in different stories. Overall, it was a really gripping read that I had a ton of fun with. A great example of a run that was very hard to put down, and I know I, for one, am excited for the Volume 2 Omnibus that I think is slated to be released later this year or in early 2026. Okay, next up on this list, I want to talk about Howard the Duck by Chip Zdarsky and Joe Quinones. This is the omnibus, and admittedly it is a smaller omnibus as the run is not overly large, but wow does this pack a punch. In a fashion that perhaps only Zdarsky could master, this run really just emotionally plays with you in a lot of fun ways. There's a lot of just laugh out loud humor, but some grounded moments that almost made you teary-eyed, at least for this reader. I really enjoyed exploring the character of Howard the Duck through this run. I've always wanted to go back and read all of his original run. I've read some of it and have enjoyed that as well, but this is really the run that I jumped on and got to know the character properly. I think that this is a perfect place for new readers to experience Howard the Duck, but there's a lot of fun Easter eggs and interstitial tissue that tie back to his original run. The art from Quinones as well is just vibrant, it's larger than life, it feels cartoony and animated in the best possible way, and it absolutely suits the storytelling presented by Zdarsky as well. What I loved perhaps most about this run, though, is the way it teased the Marvel Universe in general. Being a huge Marvel Comics fan as I am, I love the kind of tongue-in-cheek way that Zdarsky and team approach just poking fun at some of the most notable heroes, tropes, and storylines within the Marvel Universe. In fact, the way they make fun of Spider-Man in particular is just hysterical, at least it was to me. The character of Howard the Duck is in some ways really complex and in some ways extremely simple, and I feel like I got to see so many different sides of him throughout this run, all of which I thought were really engaging. He's kind of glib and sarcastic and funny, and he's paired with so many interesting characters, not only ones that were created for this run, but just also a huge just roster of Marvel heroes. This run is one I think gets slept on a lot, perhaps because it is a smaller omnibus, but it's one I really want to encourage a lot of readers to read or to check out in some fashion, as I think that it can be a breath of fresh air, especially if you're a fan of the big two superhero comics, but want something a little bit more offbeat. This is really the read for you. I absolutely loved Howard the Duck by Chip Zdarsky and Joe Quinones. And hey, if you're enjoying this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. Always doing lists and comic book reviews and things like that. Thanks, now let's go ahead and continue the list. And rounding out our list today, a comic that absolutely made me a fan of the character, this is The Question by Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan, Omnibus Volume 1 of a total of a 2-volume omnibus set. And admittedly, I am still making my way through this run, but with what I've read thus far, I am absolutely hooked on not only this run, but this character. This is a character I've been waiting for, and I'm so happy I'm finally really experiencing it more fully. I had read some of this run in paperbacks a long time ago, but revisiting now with the omnibus, I am just absolutely blown away at this character. This run really, I think, is around the 80s or maybe early 90s if I'm not mistaken, but it really is just a gritty kind of crime noir that happens to be about a vigilante. The character of The Question is of course enigmatic by nature, but I really appreciate the way this character is handled in the hands of these creators. Of course, he's out to serve the side of justice, but more than that, he's really looking for answers to questions he has regarding things that are going on. A proficient fighter, but really also kind of a journalist in a way, the character of The Question is just fascinating. What I love about this run as well, it is just intensely grounded. The world of The Question doesn't really feel mystical or super heroic. It feels grimy and gritty and crime-soaked, and I think that that is the perfect atmosphere to have a character like Vic Sage's Question. This omnibus is also just absolutely wonderful, being oversized with this beautiful art here on full display. I know I really need to try to find Volume 2 before it goes out of print, as this is a run I would love to have in its entirety. But this run, again, it just is a fun diversion from a lot of the other mainstream hits within DC Comics, and it's one that just, again, it endeared me to this character and the overall feel of the world. Most of the stories here as well are set in the fictional Hub City, which is considered an even dirtier, grimier, more ghettoized kind of Gotham, and that's another kind of striking and kind of scary image of something that's even more crime-ridden and just dilapidated and things like that. Anyway, a really fantastic setting, a really fantastic character and world here within The Question by Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan. And with that, we're going to go ahead and bring to a close 10 comics that made me a fan of the characters. A huge thank you again to the commenter that posed this idea for a prompt. I was really engaged with this one. I had the most fun putting together this list and just kind of going down memory lane, remembering some of my greatest hits that really turned me around on these characters. I would love to hear in the comments, what are some of your comic book examples that really made you fall in love with that respective character? Let's go ahead and get a great recommendation list going. Also, let me know, did you read any of the runs I showcased in today's video? I'd love to get discussions going about any of those, as again, these are some of my favorites. Again, I'd also like to mention I take these comments pretty seriously, and I'm always happy to consider some of your video ideas. Again, this was a really fun way to incorporate some of the watching community out there, so a huge thank you again, and thank you for all of you for taking this ride with me. This was a ton of fun, and I hope you stick around for our next videos that release in a couple days. Until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your like, those comments we talked about, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.